Hi there, my name is natekokernot, and I want to welcome you once again to my little corner of the internet. Today I'm going to give you the backstory on why God does not directly intervene in our lives. It's a major confusion in most people's understanding of religion that can be cleared up by reading A Course in Miracles. The whole idea of one group or another considering themselves to be the chosen ones is an example of this confusion, because they have fooled themselves into thinking that God plays favorites, and that we are his favorites. God is not taking sides in the dramas and the battles that we experience here on earth. God does not register that we have split ourselves into factions in the first place, because that's impossible to do in heaven where God dwells. The Big Bang in A Course in Miracles was a misplaced thought in the one Son of God's mind. Quote, "Into eternity, where all is one, there crept a tiny, mad idea at which the Son of God remembered not to laugh. In his forgetting did the thought become a serious idea, impossible of both accomplishment and real effects. The instant that the madness of the cause is recognized, it can have no effects. Together we can laugh them both away, and understand that time cannot intrude upon eternity. It is a joke to think that time can come to circumvent eternity, which means there is no time. A timelessness in which is time made real, a part of God which can attack itself, a separate brother as an enemy, a mind within a body, all are forms of circularity whose ending starts at its beginning, ending at its cause." End quote. From this moment on, we had a split mind, because in the exact same moment as we thought this thought, God performed their one and only intervention. They placed the Holy Spirit in each of us. The Holy Spirit is that quiet voice in all of our minds which still remembers who we truly are, co-creators with God. Since God made us in their image, and this is not a visual image which we can see with our eyes, but which, with deepening faith and knowing, we can come to accept with our real eyes. The word realize comes from this holy vision that our body's eyes are not here to report to us, as illustrated by this passage from the first chapter of the text. Quote, "The love of God for a little while must still be expressed through one body to another. That is because the real vision is still so dim. Everyone can use his body best by enlarging the perception of others, so they can see the real vision. This vision is invisible to the physical eye. The ultimate purpose of the body is to render itself unnecessary. Learning to do this is the only reason for its existence." End quote. If the entire purpose of the body, according to the ego, is to symbolize our separation, then the body's eyes are here to report to us that separation is real. As students of A Course in Miracles, we're asked to overlook what our eyes are reporting so that we can again realize the truth about us that has not changed, because truth wouldn't be the truth if it was changeable. When we're caught up in all of the swirling dramas and conflicts of our false lives, it is more difficult to listen to that quiet voice of the Holy Spirit. That's why teachers like myself often suggest that we hand our false thoughts over to the Holy Spirit in the times when the waves aren't so big around us. Another way of saying that is that we practice stepping into this discomfort in the shallow end of the pool in order to place it in our minds as the correction, and then, with a growing confidence in our own skill to reframe things by handing over our perception of them to the Holy Spirit, we'll begin to be able to take on the bigger waves. God does not intervene in our dramas down here for a very simple reason. God trusts us, because they made us in their own image, to eventually come around and accept without reservation the truth about ourselves. That we remain connected to the everything that is God, or is nature, or is the universe, depending on what level of secularity you want to go with. And this will take time, but time itself only exists in the dream world. So God's patience is not being stretched, since God doesn't acknowledge time in the first place. Along with Jesus, and this was before his crucifixion, God also intervened by setting up the atonement process, and Jesus agreed to play his part in this process. God essentially assigned Jesus with the role of being in charge of the atonement process. So Jesus is now giving us the opportunities to perform miracles, that he is working through us, not despite of us. Every time that we shirk our responsibility as miracle workers, Jesus simply calls an audible from the sidelines, presenting someone with another opportunity to achieve said miracle. So putting the Holy Spirit inside all of us as a faint memory of the truth of our being, and putting Jesus in charge of the atonement, could be said to be God's only interventions, both meant as guardrails against our foolish tendency to drift back into perceiving the separation as real. As we practice the workbook, or if we're happy to leave the G word out of our healing, then through practicing thought vigilance, we are practicing for the sake of making ourselves more miracle ready, so that when we're called on to perform a miracle, we will be making ourselves ready to perform our one true function as miracle workers. Quote, "The sole responsibility of the miracle worker is to accept atonement himself. This means that he knows that mind is the only creative level and that its errors are healed by the atonement. Once he accepts this, his mind can only heal. By denying his mind any destructive potential and reinstating its purely constructive powers, he has placed himself in a position where he can undo the level confusion of others. The message which he then gives to others is the truth that their minds are really similarly constructive and that their own miscreations cannot hurt them." End quote. We might all think that we have a better plan than God's for creating peace here on earth, but that is like wresting the power from God, thinking we know better. We're asked to choose God's will above our own, trusting that our salvation depends on this decision alone. So while many of us perceive putting the Holy Spirit in the driver's seat as foolish and naive and akin to butting one's head against reality, Jesus is giving us the reassurance that putting our faith in fear is actually butting our heads against reality and wishing that there was another path to salvation. Because the atonement, or the at-one-ment, is the changeless reality. Accepting the atonement is just us returning our minds to reality. God trusts us, but we don't trust ourselves. That's our only problem, and that's why we keep choosing fear instead of love. Jesus is in charge of the process, but Jesus, not having a body of his own, must work through us. We just have to learn how to get beneath all the noise and listen to that quiet voice of the Holy Spirit. I hope that explains why God is not intervening in our lives here on earth. Please share your comments and questions below if you have any. We're meant to awaken together and use these bodies as the Holy Spirit has directed, just as communication devices for healing's sake. Also, please like and subscribe to my channel if you're finding these ideas helpful. I'll leave it there for now, and I wish you all a beautiful day filled with blessings and miracles. Bye for now.